Jake had been living in his mountain cabin for 3 years now, and he thought he knew every sound the forest made at night, the wind through the pine trees, the distant howl of coyotes, even the occasional bear shuffling around looking for food. But lately, something else had been visiting his property, and it was driving him crazy. It started small. A few apples missing from his outdoor storage box, some crackers gone from his kitchen counter. Even though he was sure he'd locked the door, at first, Jake thought maybe he was just being forgetful. Living alone in the mountains could mess with your head sometimes, but then he found the footprints. They were small, maybe the size of a child's foot, but they had this weird shimmer to them, like someone had stepped in glitter before walking across his wooden porch. Jake had seen plenty of animal tracks in his time as a wildlife photographer, but nothing like this. The prints didn't match any animal he knew, and they definitely weren't human. The stealing got worse. Entire meals would disappear overnight. His favorite chocolate bars vanished from the pantry. Even his soap went missing, which was just plain weird. Who steals soap? Jake started feeling like he was losing his mind. He lived 20 miles from the nearest neighbor, so it couldn't be local kids playing pranks. That's when he decided to set up his trap. Jake had built the contraption a few years back when a family of raccoons kept getting into his garbage. It was basically a large cage with a motion sensor trigger, designed to catch animals safely so he could relocate them away from his property. The cage was big enough for a medium-sized dog, with comfortable padding on the bottom and plenty of air holes. He'd never actually hurt anything with it. He spent the whole afternoon setting it up near his back porch, right where most of the mysterious footprints seemed to gather. The motion sensor would trigger a spring-loaded mechanism that would gently drop a net, then guide whatever was caught into the padded cage. Jake even put some of his best chocolate inside as bait. If something was stealing his food, might as well use food to catch it. That night, Jake went to bed feeling pretty proud of himself. Tomorrow morning, he finally solved the mystery of his midnight visitor. Maybe it was some kind of rare mountain animal he could photograph. That would make for an amazing addition to his wildlife portfolio. But sleep didn't come easy. Every little sound made him wonder if his trap had worked. Round midnight, he heard his dog Buddy start whining from his bed in the living room. Buddy was a golden retriever who usually slept through everything, so Jake knew something was up. Then he heard it. A soft humming sound, almost like music, coming from outside. It was beautiful, but completely unfamiliar. The melody seemed to drift through the air, making Jake feel strangely peaceful. He'd never heard anything like it in all his years in the wilderness. Suddenly, his motion sensor alarm started beeping. Jake shot out of bed, grabbing his flashlight and camera. His heart was racing as he crept toward the back door. Whatever was out there, he was finally going to see it. The first thing Jake noticed when he opened the door was that the humming had stopped. Everything was dead quiet, except for a faint whimpering sound coming from the direction of his trap. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness as he walked carefully across the porch. What he saw made him drop his camera. Inside the cage was a girl, but not like any girl he'd ever seen before. Her skin had a soft blue tint that seemed to glow slightly in the flashlight beam. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with large silver eyes that reflected the light like a cat's. The most amazing part was the delicate wings folded against her back. They looked almost like a butterfly's wings, but translucent and shimmering. She was wearing some kind of tight-fitting suit that looked like it was made from liquid metal. The material seemed to shift colors as she moved, going from silver to blue to purple. Jake had never seen anything like it. The girl was pressed against the back corner of the cage, clearly terrified. When the flashlight hit her, she covered her face with her hands and started speaking rapidly in a language that sounded like singing. Her voice was high and musical, but Jake could hear the panic in it. Hey, it's okay," Jake said softly, setting down his flashlight so it wouldn't shine directly on her. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl peeked through her fingers and said something else in her strange language. Then, to Jake's complete shock, she switched to English. Her accent was unusual, but he could understand every word. "Please don't consume me," she said, her voice shaking. I know what your species does to others. I've seen the evidence, but I meant no harm by taking your food supplies. I was only trying to understand your nutritional requirements. Jake stared at her, his mind trying to process what he was hearing. This was clearly not human. The blue skin, the wings, the way she talked about his species like she wasn't part of it. This was an actual alien, a real, live being from another world. And she thought he was going to eat her. I'm not going to eat you, Jake said, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm a vegetarian. I don't even eat animals, let alone people, or whatever you are. I mean, whoever you are. The girl tilted her head, studying him with those incredible silver eyes. Vegetarian? This word is unfamiliar to me. Does it mean you prefer to consume your prey after seasoning them with plant matter? Jake couldn't help but laugh, even though the situation was completely insane. No, it means I only eat plants, fruits, vegetables, grains, no meat at all. This does not align with our research, the girl said, sounding confused. Your species are known predators. You consume everything in your path. Jake realized he needed to get her out of the cage. Before they could have any kind of real conversation, she looked so scared. And the cage was probably making it worse. He started working on the latch mechanism. Look, I don't know who told you that about humans, but it's not true, he said as he worked. Well, not completely true. Some humans eat meat, but plenty of us don't. And we certainly don't go around eating other intelligent beings. As the cage door swung open, the girl didn't move. She just sat there watching him suspiciously. I'm Jake, by the way, he said, stepping back to give her space. I live here alone. Well, except for my dog Buddy. He's inside sleeping. He's harmless too. The girl slowly stood up, her movements graceful despite her obvious fear. She was even smaller than Jake had thought, barely reaching his shoulder. But there was something dignified about the way she carried herself. I am called Zira, she said carefully. I am a scout for the Lumelian Research Expedition. We have been studying your world for many cycles. Lumelian, Jake repeated. Is that where you're from? Zira nodded. The planet you would call Lumenos? And what your people call the Andromeda Galaxy. Jake felt his knees go weak. He was talking to someone from another galaxy. This was the discovery of the century. Maybe the millennium, and she was standing in his backyard, afraid he was going to eat her. Why don't you come inside? Jake offered. It's cold out here, and I promise I'll keep my distance. We can talk better where it's warm. Zira looked toward the cabin, then back at Jake. You will not attempt to prepare me for consumption. I swear on my life, I will not hurt you in any way, Jake said solemnly. I just want to understand why you're here, and maybe help you if you need it. After a long moment, Zira nodded. Very well. But I warn you, my people will come looking for me if I do not return, and they will not be as trusting as I am being right now. As they walked toward the cabin, Jake's mind was racing. He had 1,000 questions, but the most important one was how he was going to convince an alien girl that humans weren't the monsters her people thought they were. Because judging by the way she kept glancing at him nervously, Zira was still half convinced he was planning to have her for breakfast. Inside the warm cabin, Zira looked around with obvious curiosity and concern. Her silver eyes darted from Jake's collection of wildlife photography books to his kitchen knives, hanging on the magnetic strip, and Jake could practically see her jumping to the wrong conclusions about everything. Those are for cooking vegetables, Jake said quickly, noticing where she was looking. And those books are my work. I'm a photographer. I take pictures of animals. Zira picked up one of the books and flipped through it, her expression growing. More worry with each page. These images, they show your hunting targets, yes? You document your prey before consuming them? Jake sank into his chair, realizing this was going to be harder than he thought. No, Zira, I don't hunt anything. I just take pictures. Look, see this one of the mountain lion. I watched her for hours, took dozens of photos, and then left her, completely alone. She's probably still living happily in these mountains. But why would you observe prey animals if not to study their weaknesses? Zira asked. Still clutching the book like it was evidence in a trial. Jake got up and walked to his kitchen, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle her. Let me show you something. Are you hungry? Zira's eyes widened in alarm. You wish to prepare food? I do not think I'm ready for that level of trust yet. I'm going to make myself a sandwich. Jake said patiently, just watch, okay? No, one's getting prepared for anything. He pulled out bread, lettuce, tomatoes, and some cheese from his refrigerator. Zira watched every move like he was performing dangerous surgery. When Jake started slicing the tomato, she actually took a step backward. This red substance, she said nervously, it appears to be bleeding. Jake held up the tomato slice. It's just a tomato, a fruit. Here, watch. He took a big bite of the slice, chewing thoughtfully. See? Completely harmless, delicious, actually. Zira looked fascinated despite her fear. Your planet grows food that resembles organic matter. All food is organic matter, Jake said, continuing to build his sandwich. Plants, vegetables, fruits, even meat, though I don't eat that. But everything that grows comes from the earth. He finished making the sandwich and took a large bite, making sure Zira could see that he was enjoying it. This is what I eat. Bread made from wheat, vegetables from the garden, cheese from cow's milk. No hunting required. Zira watched him eat with intense concentration. On Lumenos, our food is synthesized from mineral compounds. We do not consume other living organisms. That actually sounds pretty cool, Jake said. But here on Earth, even plants are living organisms. We just try to do it in a way that doesn't cause unnecessary suffering. This seemed to confuse Zira even more. She sat down carefully on the edge of Jake's couch, her wings folding neatly behind her. Your people make distinctions between types of life forms, Jake nodded. Most of us do. We generally don't eat anything that can think or feel pain the way we do. That's why I don't eat animals. But plants are different. They don't have nervous systems like we do. This is complicated, Zira said slowly. Our research indicated that humans consume everything they encounter. We have observed your cities expanding over natural habitats, your ships harvesting creatures from the oceans, your factories processing organic matter on a massive scale. Jake felt a pang of guilt. When she put it that way, humans did sound pretty destructive. You're not wrong about some of that, he admitted. Humans can be excessive. We don't always make the best choices about how we treat other living things or the planet. But we're not all the same. Many of us are trying to do better. Zira studied his face intently. You truly do not consume other sentient beings? Never, Jake said firmly. The idea horrifies me. Actually, most humans feel the same way. But you captured me in your snare device, Zira pointed out. Jake winced. That was an accident. I was trying to figure out who was taking my food. I thought maybe it was a raccoon or something. I never imagined it would be, well, you. Zira was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she asked, why did you free me from the cage? Because you were scared, Jake said simply. And because keeping someone trapped against their will is wrong. Even if I didn't know what you were, I could see you were intelligent and afraid. This seemed to surprise Zira more than anything else he'd said. Your people have concepts of right and wrong that apply to other species? Of course we do, Jake said. Well, most of us do. We call it ethics or morality. The idea that we should treat others the way we'd want to be treated ourselves. Zira stood up abruptly and began pacing around the small living room, her wings rustling slightly as she moved. This contradicts everything we know about your species. Our scientists have studied human behavior for decades. You wage wars. You destroy environments. You consume resources without regard for other life forms. Jake sighed. Again, you're not entirely wrong. Humans do a lot of terrible things to each other and to the planet. But you're only seeing part of the picture. Yes, some humans are destructive and selfish, but others spend their lives trying to protect wildlife, clean up the environment, help people in need, create beautiful art, explore space peacefully. You explore space? Zira asked, stopping her pacing. We're trying to, Jake said. We've Been to our moon. We've sent robots to other planets in our solar system. We dream about meeting other intelligent life forms and learning from them. Zira looked skeptical. To conquer them, surely. Some people might think that way, Jake admitted. But many of us just want to know we're not alone in the universe. We want to learn. To understand. To maybe make friends with other civilizations. Zira sat back down, looking thoughtful. Friends, Jake nodded. Beings who care about each other. Help each other. Enjoy spending time together. Like I'm hoping we can be. For the first time since he found her, Zira smiled slightly. It transformed her whole face, making her look less alien and more like a person who just happened to have blue skin and wings. On Luminos, we have a similar concept, she said. We call it harmony bonding, when two beings resonate on compatible frequencies. That sounds beautiful, Jake said. Is that why you were taking my food? To understand me? Zira nodded, looking a bit embarrassed. I was assigned to study human nutritional habits and social behaviors. Your dwelling appeared to house a solitary male, which our research suggested would be less dangerous than approaching a large group. I thought if I could analyze your food sources, I could better understand your species' needs and motivations. So you've been watching me? Jake asked, not sure whether to be flattered or concerned. From a distance, Zira said quickly, I observed your daily routines, your interactions with local wildlife, your solitary activities. You seemed different from our expectations. Jake laughed. I bet I did. I probably looked pretty boring compared to what you were expecting from a dangerous human predator. You were gentle with the small creatures that visited your dwelling. Zira said, you fed them but did not capture them. You observed the larger animals but made no attempt to hunt them. It was confusing. Maybe that's because your people's research was based on incomplete information, Jake suggested. Maybe humans are more complicated than your scientists. Zira considered this, perhaps, but if that is true, then I have made a significant error in judgment by revealing myself to you. Why would that be an error? Jake asked. Zira's expression grew serious. Because if my people discover that I have not only failed to maintain proper observation protocols, but have also allowed myself to be captured by a human, they will assume I have been compromised. They will send a recovery team to extract me and neutralize any potential threats. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Neutralize threats. You mean they will eliminate you to prevent you from sharing knowledge of our existence with other humans? Zira said quietly, it is standard procedure when contact protocols are breached. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire in Jake's fireplace. He realized that by trying to solve the mystery of his missing food, he might have just signed his own death warrant. But looking at Zira's worried expression, he also realized something else. She didn't want him to get hurt, somehow, in the space of a few hours. This alien girl who had been terrified he would eat her was now concerned about his safety. Maybe there was hope for both of them after all. The next morning, Jake woke up to find Zira sitting by his window, staring out at the forest with a worried expression. She hadn't slept at all, claiming that Lumelians only needed rest every few Earth days. Instead, she'd spent the night examining everything in his cabin with scientific curiosity. My ship will have detected the activation of my emergency beacon when your trap captured me, she said without turning around. I have perhaps 2 of your days before a recovery team arrives. Jake poured himself coffee and offered some to Zira, who sniffed it suspiciously before declining. What exactly happens when they get here? They will scan the area for signs of contamination, Zira explained. If they determine that I have been compromised by extended contact with a potentially hostile species, they will extract me for psychological rehabilitation. Psychological rehabilitation? Jake didn't like the sound of that. They will remove any foreign influences from my thought patterns, Zira said matter-of-factly. Essentially, they will erase any changes in my personality that resulted from interacting with you. Jake felt sick. They'll erase your memories of me? Not the memories themselves, but the emotional responses associated with them. I will remember meeting you, but I will no longer feel any positive connection to the experience. I will view it purely as a scientific encounter with a dangerous predator. Jake sat down heavily in his chair. And what happens to me? Zira finally turned to look at him. Her silver eyes filled with something that might have been regret. Standard protocol is elimination of potential security risks. However, if I can convince them that you pose no threat to our mission, they might simply relocate you to a different area with modified memories. Modified memories? You would remember having a strange dream about meeting someone unusual, but the details would fade quickly. You would go back to your normal life. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains he'd called home for 3 years. The idea of being forced to leave, or worse, having his memories altered, made him feel trapped in a way he'd never experienced before. There has to be another option, he said. Zira joined him at the window. I have been thinking about this all night. There's one possibility, but it would require you to trust me completely. I'm listening. I could present you to my people as a cooperative research subject, Zira said slowly. If you were willing to participate in our study of human behavior, they might allow you to live freely under observation rather than eliminating you as a threat. Jake turned to face her. What would that involve? You would need to convince them that humans are not the dangerous predators we believe you to be. You would have to demonstrate your species' capacity for peaceful coexistence and scientific cooperation. And if I can't convince them, Zira's expression grew grim. Then both of our fates will be sealed. They will assume I have been completely compromised by your influence, and they will not hesitate to eliminate both of us. Jake thought about this for a long moment. It was a huge risk, but what choice did he have? Running wouldn't work. If Zira's people were advanced enough for interstellar travel, they could probably track him anywhere on Earth, and the idea of forgetting Zira, of having their connection erased from his mind, was almost worse than the alternative. Okay, he said finally, I'll do it, but I want to spend whatever time we have left learning about each other. If I'm going to convince your people that humans aren't monsters, I need to understand what they think we are and why. Zira nodded. That is wise, and I confess, I am curious to learn more about human culture beyond what our distant observations have revealed. They spent the rest of the morning with Zira explaining Lumelian society to Jake. Her people had evolved on a world where multiple intelligent species coexisted peacefully, sharing resources and knowledge. The concept of one species dominating or consuming others was so foreign to them that when they first observed human behavior, they assumed humans must be some kind of aberrant predator species. We watched your cities expand and consume natural habitats, Zira explained. We saw your fishing fleets harvesting vast quantities of sea life, your hunting of other mammals for sport and food, your wars over territory and resources. To us, it looked like a species that consumed everything in its path without regard for balance or sustainability. Jake had to admit that from an outside perspective, human behavior probably did look pretty alarming. But didn't you observe any positive human behaviors? Art, music, conservation efforts, acts of kindness? We did, Zira said. But our scientists theorized that these were simply more sophisticated hunting strategies. Your music and art were classified as lures to attract prey. Your conservation efforts were seen as resource management to ensure future hunting opportunities. Jake paused, trying to think of a diplomatic way to say it. That's a pretty cynical interpretation when your worldview is based on cooperation and mutual benefit. A species that appears to dominate and consume others seems genuinely monstrous, Zira said. We could not conceive of any other explanation for your behaviors. As the day went on, Jake found himself sharing more and more about human culture with Zira. He showed her books of poetry and art, played her different types of music, and explained human concepts like love, friendship, and sacrifice. Zira was particularly fascinated by the idea that humans would risk their own safety to help strangers. This does not serve any evolutionary purpose, she said, puzzled. Why would a predator species develop altruistic behaviors? Maybe because we're not actually predators, Jake suggested. Maybe we're just a young species that's still learning how to balance our needs with the needs of others, In return, Zero shared stories of Luminos, describing a world where crystalline forests grew songs instead of leaves where the aurora-like lights in the sky carried messages between different regions, and where conflicts were resolved through harmonic resonance rather than violence. It sounds like a beautiful world, Jake said wistfully. It is, Zero agreed. But perhaps it is too sheltered. We have lived in harmony for so long that we forgot other types of existence. Might be possible. Your species may be chaotic and destructive, but you are also creative and passionate in ways we have never experienced. As evening approached, Jake made dinner while Zero watched with continued fascination. He prepared an elaborate vegetarian meal, narrating each step to show her that human food preparation could be creative and nurturing rather than predatory. This is like artwork, Zero observed as Jake arranged colorful vegetables on their plates. Food is one of the ways humans show care for each other, Jake explained. We put time and effort into making meals beautiful and delicious because sharing food is how we express love and friendship. When he offered her a small bite of roasted sweet potato, Zero hesitated for a long moment before carefully tasting it. Her eyes widened in surprise. "This is pleasant," she said, sounding shocked. "It has a complex flavor profile that is both nutritious and aesthetically satisfying," Jake smiled. "Welcome to human cuisine. It's one of our better inventions." As they ate together, Jake realized something had changed between them. Zero was no longer watching him with suspicion or fear. Instead, she seemed genuinely curious about his thoughts and feelings. When she laughed at one of his jokes about living alone in the mountains, the sound was like music. "Jake," she said as they finished eating, "I must tell you something. My feelings about your species have changed significantly since yesterday. You have shown me kindness, patience, and respect. You have shared your knowledge freely without expecting anything in return. These are not the behaviors of a predator." Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. "Thank you, Zero. That means more to me than you know. But I fear my personal feelings may not be enough to convince my people." She continued, "They will see my changed perspective as evidence of contamination rather than enlightenment." Jake reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Her skin was warm and soft, just like a human's. "Then we'll have to make sure they understand that some contamination can actually be a good thing. Maybe it's time for both our species to learn something new about each other." Zero looked down at their joined hands with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. When she looked back up at him, her silver eyes seemed to glow in the candle light. "I believe I am beginning to understand another human concept you described earlier," she said softly. "Which one?" "The one you called friendship. Though I suspect what I am feeling may be even more complex than that." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He was falling for an alien girl who might disappear from his life forever in less than 24 hours. It should have been terrifying, but instead it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I think I know what you mean," he said quietly. "I'm feeling it too." Jake woke up the next morning to the sound of Zero humming that beautiful, otherworldly melody he'd heard the night he caught her. She was sitting cross-legged on his porch. Her wings spread wide to catch the morning sunlight. The translucent membrane seemed to shimmer with captured light, creating rainbow patterns on the wooden deck. "Good morning," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. Zero turned and smiled, and Jake's heart did that little skip it had been doing every time she looked at him. "Good morning, Jake. I was absorbing solar energy. It helps maintain my wing structure." Jake settled beside her on the porch with his coffee. "How long do we have before your people arrive?" "I estimate they will be here by this afternoon," Zero said, her expression growing serious. "I have been thinking about our strategy, and I believe our best approach is complete honesty. I will tell them exactly what happened, how you treated me, and what I have learned about human nature through you. If they choose to see this as contamination rather than valuable research data, then at least we will have been true to ourselves." Jake nodded, though the knot in his stomach tightened. "What are they like, your people?" "The ones who are coming. The recovery team will be led by Commander Vex," Zero said. "She is highly logical, extremely efficient, and completely devoted. to Lumelian safety protocols. She trained me as a scout, and she does not tolerate deviation from established procedures. Sounds intimidating. She is. But she is also fair. If we can present compelling evidence that contradicts her assumptions about humans, she will consider it. The challenge will be convincing her that I have not been psychologically compromised. By our interaction, Jake stood up and walked to the porch railing, looking out at the forest. Maybe we should practice. What kinds of questions will she ask? For the next several hours, Zira grilled Jake with the sort of question she expected from Commander Vex. Why didn't humans consume other intelligent species? How did human society maintain stability without a unified hive mind? Why did humans create art and music if not to lure prey? How could a species that engaged in warfare also be capable of compassion? Jake found himself articulating ideas about humanity that he'd never really put into words before. He talked about human complexity, their capacity for both creation and destruction, their struggle to balance individual desires with collective needs. He explained how humans were still evolving socially and morally, learning from their mistakes and trying to build better societies. The key thing to understand, Jake said during one of their practice sessions, is that humans aren't a single entity with a unified purpose. We're billions of individuals, each making our own choices about how to live. Some of those choices are terrible, some are beautiful, and most are somewhere in between. Zira nodded thoughtfully. This concept of individual agency is difficult for my people to grasp. Lumelians make decisions through collective consensus. The idea that billions of beings could exist without unified purpose seems chaotic and dangerous to us. It is chaotic, Jake admitted, but it's also what makes us creative and adaptable. Our diversity of thought and experience is one of our greatest strengths. Around midday, Zira suddenly tensed. They are here, she said, her voice tight with anxiety. Jake looked around but saw nothing unusual. Where? Their ship is in stealth mode, but I can sense their scanning beams. They are examining the area for signs of threat or contamination, as if summoned by her words. A section of empty air above Jake's property began to shimmer and warp. Slowly, a sleek craft materialized, its surface reflecting the sky so perfectly it had been completely invisible. The ship was beautiful in an alien way, all curved lines and flowing surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. The craft settled silently in Jake's backyard, its landing barely disturbing the grass. A section of the hull flowed open like liquid metal, and three figures emerged. The first was clearly Commander Vex. She was taller than Zira, with darker blue skin and more pronounced wing structures. Her silver eyes were cold and analytical as they scanned the area. She wore what looked like armor made from the same liquid metal material as Zira's suit, but with additional tactical modifications. The other two were shorter, more similar to Zira in build. One carried what was obviously some kind of scientific scanning device, while the other held what Jake really hoped wasn't a weapon. Scout Zira, Commander Vex said, her voice carrying clearly across the yard. Report your status. Zira stood up straight, and Jake could see her shifting into a more formal posture. Commander Vex, I am unharmed and cognitively functional. I have gathered significant data regarding human behavioral patterns that contradicts our previous research findings. Commander Vex's gaze shifted to Jake, and he felt like he was being examined under a microscope. And this is the human specimen that captured you? His name is Jake, Zira said firmly. He freed me from his trap immediately upon realizing I was a sentient being. He has treated me with respect and kindness throughout our interaction. I see. Commander Vex stepped closer, her movements fluid and predatory. Human designation Jake. You will submit to our scanning procedures. Any attempt to resist or flee will be met with immediate neutralization. Jake's mouth went dry, but he nodded. I understand. I'm not going to resist or run. I just want to talk. The scientist with the scanning device approached Jake and began running some kind of device over him. It made soft beeping sounds and projected holographic displays that Jake couldn't interpret. No weapons detected, the scientist reported. Elevated stress indicators, but no signs of aggressive preparation. Nutritional analysis indicates primarily plant-based diet, with minimal consumption of animal proteins. Commander Vex looked surprised. Minimal animal consumption? Our research indicates the species are obligate carnivores. That's not accurate. Jake said, finding his voice. Humans are omnivores. We can eat both plants and animals. But we don't have to. Many humans choose to eat only plants for ethical, health, or environmental reasons. Ethical reasons? The commander repeated, as if the words didn't make sense to her. We believe it's wrong to cause unnecessary suffering to other living beings, Jake explained. So some of us choose not to eat animals when we can survive perfectly well without doing so. The three Lumelians exchanged glances that Jake couldn't interpret. Commander Vex turned back to Zira, Scout. Has your interaction with this human affected your judgment regarding his species' threat level? Yes, Commander, Zira said without hesitation. Based on my observations, I believe our assessment of humans as apex predators is fundamentally flawed. While some humans do exhibit destructive behaviors, others demonstrate remarkable capacity for empathy, creativity, and moral reasoning. Such capacity could simply be sophisticated camouflage, the commander replied. Intelligent predators often use deception to approach their victims. Jake stepped forward. Commander Vex, may I ask you a question? The commander's eyes narrowed. You may speak. If humans were really the dangerous predators you think we are, why haven't we tried to capture and study you? Your people have been watching us for decades. Right. If we were as aggressive and consuming as you believe, wouldn't we have detected your presence and tried to hunt you down? This seemed to give the commander pause. She looked at her two companions, then back at Jake. Perhaps your species lacks the technological capability to detect our observation methods. Maybe, Jake conceded. But what about Zira? I had her completely helpless in my trap. If I was really a predator, wouldn't that have been the perfect opportunity to, well, do whatever it is you think I would do? Instead, I freed her, gave her food and shelter, and tried to make her feel safe. The human speaks truth about his actions. Zira added, he has had multiple opportunities to harm me, but instead he has shown me nothing but kindness. He shared his knowledge freely, answered all my questions with patience, and respected my boundaries even when I was clearly vulnerable. Commander Vex was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Even if this individual human is not immediately threatening, it does not negate the danger your species poses to galactic stability. We have observed your wars, your environmental destruction, your expansion into space. These are the behaviors of a species that consumes without regard for consequences. Jake,